Why? Why? Keith, just the open-ended question of why would this be happening? Why?
I think well, one thing you have to understand is whereas everybody else in the world but about 31 guys looks at this and says, you really have managed to find the worst thing you could do at the worst possible moment you could do it. The baseball owners and Rob Manfred think they are having a tremendous success right now because to begin with, in the best of times with the best commissioners and the best owners and the sort of necessary peril that makes a business sharp-edged and forward-thinking and kind of responsible. Under the best of circumstances, baseball's long-term planning is, let's see what day, it's Tuesday today, okay, let's do the long-term planning meeting so we can decide what we're doing on Friday. They've never done. They've never thought ahead. They don't see things the way everybody else does. But Manfred, and I didn't know him in school, but I attended classes in the college that he went to, the Industrial and Labor Relations School. And out of 100 students, there were like 10 like me who were in the ag school or art school or whatever, and went there to get the history classes about labor relations in this country. Fascinating stuff. I met a professor there who I knew up until they passed away a couple of years ago. And, good, solid studenting going on in that school. So there's about 10 of us, and there'd be about 88 people who were hoping to get involved in labor to some degree, either as a mediator or on labor's side. Mm-hmm. And then there were two guys in the back writing everything down to figure out how to screw employees and pay them less and pull their rights back one at a time over the course of a century. And Manfred has got to be saying, well, I know it looks a little bad, but think of the money we're going to be saving. We're not going to be wasting our money on a season people aren't going to watch, and maybe we won't get to go to. And think of the liability we will not have. No player or fan will sue us if they get COVID-19 at one of our games, and we won't have to abandon it. And we'll have to make good with we'll put out a story that we're not going to make any money on this. They think this is going well, and when they forced the strike in 1981 and when they forced the strike in 1994, they thought it was going well. And when they thought they were going to force the players to go out on strike just before the first anniversary of 9/11, they thought that was going well. There were owners who were kind of disappointed that they didn't force the players to be on strike on the first anniversary of 9/11 because there is a disconnect between humanity and baseball owners that exceeds anything else that I've encountered, and this includes all of my political experience.
That's
wow. There are a couple of people that you could have conversations with, and who have, if they didn't experience real life in their own lives, like George Steinbrenner never had a real life day in his life, but somehow he did have human empathy and understood that his business largely consisted of people liking it. It was an amorphous kind of not defined by the dollar, like the sales are up in Chicago. Well, so what? I mean, these guys, the rest of them, for the most part, I was looking at an old article I wrote about Mark McGwire 20 years ago, and yes. I really had forgotten that in the 90s, baseball had made a point of noting that they had gotten such a jump in ticket sales in the 90s. And it was like, well, you expanded twice. There are 4 more teams. You better have had more people at all the games. You had, 700 more games every year. And it turned out that the increase was, if you discounted that, was 500 people a game. And but that was their idea of sales. And it didn't matter that there was a reason for it that had nothing to do with people liking it more or liking it less. There was just more of it to sell. But there's no understanding of this as a national heirloom. And I think it's, it comes from the top. For all the other flaws that Bud Selig had, he was able periodically to remind people that it was a public relations effort that they were in more than anything else that sold the product. It wasn't, we provide content for people who happen to be at the stadium. No, that's not what you do. You help me, slant baseball as I can to get the Brewers back into the National League. But, these guys, they're led by a guy who believes that success in industry is taken away from employees and given to owners. That's where we wind up. And there's kind of a metaphor for lots of things going on in our society contained in this attitude. But there is no doubt in my mind that in the Major League Baseball headquarters, half a mile from where I sit right now, and in the various ownership yachts around the country, they think this is great. And they are convinced, as they have always been convinced, that the players will buckle and the fans will forgive and forget. And, people protesting in every country, every city in the country for 3 weeks in a row and given new reason to do so every other week, and pandemic. Those things, they don't understand those things. They don't have any meaning. They do not fit into their linear projections and their slide rules. And they're led by somebody who does not particularly like baseball. His name is Rob Manfred, and unfortunately, he's the commissioner.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.